December 21st, 1850, into a secure and respected family, John Brown was to become one of the most influential figures in coal mining. He was educated at Newcastle and at the age of 14 began work in the Newcastle office of his father's and uncle's firm, J&A Brown. In 1877, John Brown's uncle Alexander died, leaving his £100,000 estate to his nephews. John became general manager of the Brown family's coal interests and soon gained control of company policy. He concentrated his efforts on maximising productivity, and in 1896, when many collieries were idle, Brown's Minmi mines worked on 256 out of a possible 280 days, and the next year were active on 264. In the early 1900s, Brown expanded his South Maitland interests, acquiring the high-producing Pelham and Richmond Main collieries, and by 1904 had connected both to the firm's Minmi Hexham Railway. He also built up a fleet of tugboats, which operated in both Sydney and Newcastle.
John Brown was one of those amazing characters. He was so rich, he was so powerful, and yet he used to worry about strange things. In particular, we believe he was very worried about his mother and what she thought. And he was definitely a mum's boy. When he went racing, she was Presbyterian, he was Presbyterian. He was a little worried about what Mum might think, and so he registered all his horses under the name of J. Barron. Now, this also, of course, has further significance for Brown because he liked the idea that he was some sort of feudal lord, and he behaved like one whenever he went out to his suburbs, his properties like Minmi, or wherever he went to his racehorses or anything of that sort. He did behave in a somewhat feudal and aloof manner.
On one excursion abroad, he spent over £1 million on locomotives, mining equipment, and a steamship to carry them home. He acquired a reputation for severity, denying his Minmi miners the opportunity to buy the land on which their homes were built.
Yes, we're standing right in front of a house somewhat similar to the ones that existed at Minmi in those days. And John Brown was one of those very severe Victorian employers who thought it was his job to arrange industry and arrange jobs. And it was up to his workers to take the wages that were available, that were prevailing at the time, and to do exactly as they were expected to do. Now, this is nowhere better illustrated than in the reference to the houses at Minmi, because the Browns would never sell land to their miners. They would only lease the land out on a weekly basis or a yearly basis or a 30-year basis, so that the miners could always be moved out if there was a strike and they got obstropolous, and then they could be forced out of their houses. Now, typical is that James Brown, John's father, the first-generation owner, he gave his miners 30-year leases. But in the 1890s, when the leases ran out and John Brown was now the proprietor of the whole place, he said, OK, you can have 7-day leases, and this gave him control of his workforce.
Shrewd, analytical, and taciturn, Brown shunned publicity and was an enigmatic and legendary figure. Although he was the focal point for much industrial ill will and labour oratory, the Australian worker admitted that
in his personal relations with his employees, he was by no means wholly unkind. Indeed, at infrequent times, he was comparatively generous.
John Brown died childless at his unpretentious home in Wolfe Street, Newcastle, on the 5th of March, 1930.